Welcome back. You're watching SA Today with me, Unathi Bagyashe. Let's take you now to this conversation and just get some reaction. Of course, a landmark ruling approved by Pope Francis will now allow a Roman Catholic priest to administer blessings to same-sex couples. We're now joined via Teams by Mpho Buntse, Access Chapter 2 spokesperson. Mpho, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Let's get your reaction now following this historic event, that announcement by the Vatican. How significant is it for the LGBTQIA plus community?
Look, Unathi, thank you very much, and thank you to your viewers. Look, everything that says the LGBTQ is included, is represented, spells victory for us. And this decision, part of why it makes us excited, is this idea that we know that the Vatican, when they make decisions, it often becomes a ripple effect. But over and above that, we know of a very complicated relationship between the Vatican as well as the LGBTIQ community. So this decision really calls for us to celebrate, although it's not where we want it to be, but it's a step towards the right direction.
And you are right, because a lot of people saying whilst, there are certain rules that govern this latest decision, it's still a good move. I mean, there are still laws that the church says need to be observed. As an example, the understanding is that the same-sex marriage blessing should not be confused with the sacrament of marriage, as the church still believes that marriage is between a man and a woman. And another rule is that women in the church cannot become priests, etc. How you mentioned earlier on that whilst it is still governed by certain laws, it will have some form of a ripple effect. What does that look like, particularly here in South Africa?
Look, we've seen so many advances, Unathi, here in South Africa. The Catholic Church has made quite a number of moves domestically. However, it's important to note, this decision at the level of the Vatican. The Pope has always, postured himself as a person who is inclusive, but also an ally of the LGBTIQ plus community. Just moments after he was placed in office as the new Vatican, he uttered words around the nature that who is he rather to judge another priest who affirms as LGBTQ. But over above that, we've seen him throughout his tenure as the Pope. He's actually been in support of some kind of inclusivity and representation of LGBTQ Catholics in the church. But we know that for South Africa, this decision will be accepted with both hands, because we've seen how the church has made advances, in the recent future. Also, it's important that we note, where this comes from. As early as 2021, the church has, taken out a position to say it still stands by the fact that the rules of the church insist that marriage will only be seen between a man and a woman, like it indicates. So this decision does not necessarily imply that priests are now given a go-ahead by the Vatican City to marry in terms of like a marriage ceremony to marry same-sex couples. But what it really says is that the idea of a blessing can be granted to anyone, because that's what gets you closer to communication with God. So that's what the Pope is saying through this communication. And we believe that it's one step of indicating that the church now does not marginalize its congregants because of how they identify or because of who they choose to love. So that's why we are saying it's a good step towards the right direction. We hope that the entire rule of the church will in the future change to ensure that the church also marries same-sex couples.
Do you think it will in any way change, just the perception from, the group of religious leaders that we saw in South Africa banding together, against the hate crimes bill, that will soon be passed into law? They are opposed to it on various levels, particularly against the community that we are speaking of. Do you think a little bit of a shift in sentiment would necessarily occur?
Globally, when one searches the internet regarding comments from some reputable Catholic clergymen across the world, you find that there's a considerable amount that are actually saying that this decision will break the church into two. But what I'm saying is that in our context of South Africa, mainly because there's already been work towards ensuring that there is inclusion of LGBTQ within the context as a church. I believe that it will be, much easier than compared to what is currently happening in the global context. But over and above that, what we are saying is that we know that in South Africa, we have had a similar, decision at the level of Home Affairs, where with the amendment of the Civil Union Act, marriage officials within the Home Affairs Department in the past could choose whether they want to marry same-sex couples or not. But with this amendment, it was made clear that all marriage officials will marry same-sex couples. I'm making an example with this to indicate that I don't think within the context of South Africa and the church itself, we will have issues but to execute.
All right, Mpho, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Mpho Buntse, Access Chapter 2 spokesperson, just chatting there to us about that latest, of course, a groundbreaking victory for the community of the LGBTQIA+.